Before we start today's episode, I just wanted to give a quick note. I was recording this live and I accidentally pressed a button on my recorder, which makes the first 4 minutes or so of the review sound a little weird, but then you'll hear that I unpress that button and then it snaps into normal mode. So if you listen to the beginning, you're like, this sounds a little weird, give it a few minutes and it'll get right back to normal. I'm sorry about that, and we're working to be better every episode. So with that in mind, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. In 1999, many were concerned with a huge potential problem that loomed with the turn of the century. It was thought that since computers identified the year with a 2-digit number, that as the clock struck midnight on January 1st, 2000, these computers would be unable to distinguish the year 2000 from the year 1900. This could have devastating effects on logistics and resources managed by computers. Of course, that time came and went, and the turn of the century proved to be largely uneventful. But what if computers had become sentient and tried to destroy the world? This is the scenario explored in Y2K. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm leaving the theater. Nope, not next to that fan. All right, this is Ronald, and I am leaving the theater after seeing Y2K. Y2K, written by Kyle Mooney and Evan Winter, directed by Kyle Mooney, starring Jaeden Martell, Julian, Dennison, Rachel Zegler, Fred Durst, Kyle Mooney, the Kid Laroi, and Alicia Silverstone. For a complete cast listing, as always, you can go to the link in our show notes. I am not here alone. Fresh out of Boston, Massachusetts, I am here with Boston correspondent who is currently kicking into the air a visual moment on an audio medium. I am here with
Laura Nichols. I get excited. I get with the tea up, makes me feel hype. Just fresh off the tea, baby.
Fresh off the, what is the tea?
The tea. It's the train in Boston. It's called the tea. That's
we don't know that. So Boston correspondent Laura Nichols back once again. Okay, Boston correspondent Laura Nichols back for another one. You actually suggested this movie.
Yeah, unfortunately, I did. Yeah.
Don't give away too much too early.
Yes, it was me.
You valiantly suggested this movie, which we are going to give you our opinions on right now. Y2K is a movie written by Kyle Mooney, who I'm actually a big fan of. He is from SNL. He is of the digital shorts era. He took the baton after Andy Samberg left, and probably was also there before the Please Don't Destroy guys showed up. So very weird humor, very anti-humor. It's funny because Tim Heidecker is also in this movie, also of weird humor, anti-humor. The movie is... Kyle Mooney said he wrote the movie because he said nothing happened on Y2K. He said it was a nothing burger. But he said, wouldn't it be crazy if there was a movie where the kids were partying and that while they're at the party, Y2K happens? I saw the preview. Laura saw the preview. We thought this was an interesting premise, and we were excited to see this movie. Laura, what did you think of said movie?
I was very disappointed. I thought this conceit is so cool to me. I love the idea of taking something we all lived through that was nothing and turning it into the horror movie we thought it might become. That is so fun, and I cannot I'm like still processing how he made this movie. First of all, so boring. It is, okay, so the beginning there's some really fun robot fights, and then it just goes dead for like an hour with just like boring like romantic drama with these drip teenagers who have like no personality. They keep stating the type of teen they are instead of actually showing you anything, which I found just lazy and repetitive. It was just redundant. Then the funniest part of this movie is the computer. I actually think, like, why didn't they just write the whole movie? They swung, I think, way too weak on this. They should have gone so much harder. It actually made me think, have you ever seen the movie Small Soldiers?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so like to me, Small Soldiers did in 1998 what this movie failed to do, which is like take a crazy ass premise of inanimate objects coming to life and making it like funny. And that movie is poignant. It's got about like the military industrial complex. It's got like a really strong point. It's just doing so much. I'm like, how do they achieve this almost 30 years ago? Is that right? Yeah. Whereas in this movie, couldn't even. Like, it's like the frequency never spiked. I thought they were doing something brave at first because they actually killed off one of the main characters very early. And I was like, oh, I was sat up. I'm like, okay, maybe they're going to do some like really interesting shit here. No, that's the last interesting thing that happens. I was bummed.
Yeah, this movie was absolute trash. The thing is, the personality of this movie is nostalgia, the 90s, and it kind of like just sits there for a while. And you were a few minutes late to the movie, not late enough to miss anything, but they go hard with the nostalgia in the beginning. It starts with a computer screen. We're dialing up to the internet. We're talking on AIM. There's away messages. He's playing an MP3. Like just all of these little things happening. He's watching a video about Y2K. And I think what they did wrong was they started the movie too much with high school drama high school movie. And I saw what they were doing, and they admitted to this in the Q&A afterwards, where they said they were making a movie that was nostalgic to the 90s. I felt that. Everything from the way that they open the movies to the way he's riding his bike in the beginning. You didn't see this, but he's riding his bike in the beginning through the neighborhood, headed to the school. There's some people doing the Macarena. It's very much like a visual overture of the movie. But this movie is an hour and 31 minutes, and somehow it felt both rushed and too long at the same time. Like I was sitting there watching and I was like, yo, y'all gotta wrap this up because there's a lot of unearned charisma in this movie in a way that's like really, 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 really irritating me. And then I think one thing that really bothered me the most, I realized there's something that you said, and I feel like I nailed this by saying this movie refuses to commit to being funny. Like there were times when they would say a joke and I'm like, obviously there's a punchline coming here. There's one character dying and another character is watching him die and he says, I thought you hated me. And I knew the response was just gonna be, I do. And then the dude dies. That's not what happened. Some other stupid line comes out about rap being rap, which comes out. And I'm like, no, that's not, come on, man. Are y'all gonna be funny or not? Because if you're gonna be kind of funny, this is a ridiculous premise. Come with the jokes, and they just refuse to do it.
Yes, completely agree. And I did, in fact, go to the wrong theater, so I know I missed those first few minutes. And I mean, I assume they were going to go heavy on that. Some of that worked. Some of it did at times make me feel like these kids were not 90s teens. They sort of sometimes felt like, especially Rachel Zegler, felt like a current adult like person pretending to do a bit about the 90s. It just didn't feel like lived in that way. They didn't have that sort of like insecurity, that awkwardness of the 90s. They had that cool swagger of like more kind of Gen Z, Gen Z, maybe like young millennials. They just didn't have that 90s feeling, but I completely agree. Like the computer part was so fucking funny. Whenever they let the computer talk and roast the humans, it was like hysterical. That felt like an SNL bit to me.
But they barely gave the computers a personality beyond that.
That's a good point. And speaking of giving people personalities, how come no one had a fucking personality? Yeah. Except for the friend.
Except for one who they killed. Yeah. And it's like, now where is this going?
But even that, I would argue, was super bad.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly what I said. It's super bad. Yes.
Literally was super bad. Yeah. It was a little bit more, except it was like more, the guy was more boring than, what's his name?
Jonah Hill.
The other one.
Oh, Michael Cera.
The one who was... Yes. The Michael Cera stand-in was so fucking boring. His only personality was that he was boring and wanted to not be. And we're supposed to like root for this kid to not be boring. And that's like our whole job as the audience. Rachel Zegler, like getting into it, there was a part that I knew this movie did not know what the fuck it was doing when her good friend, her best friend dies. Mm-hmm. Then his best friend dies. Mm-hmm. No one says a fucking word to her about her best friend dying, and everybody's like, oh, your friend died. I'm so sorry, young man. And she's just like, has to support him and be like bland love, object for him, and has no I mean, it's cool that she does save the day. I'll give her that. They set it up. And this is a repetitiveness, and to your point, how they don't commit to being funny. They also don't commit to growth of these characters in any fucking way. Like, she is a computer whiz. Great. The guy, what am I trying to say? The main character, he just keeps repeating the same dialogue over and over and over. And one of those things is, she's great at computers. She's great at, it's like, we fucking get it.
Yeah.
We understand. Like, okay, thanks. Can she do anything else except like hack something to the side and just like give you like blinky sweetheart eyes while you have a crush on her? Is there anything else this character can really do?
Yeah, I that's one thing, like watching her, I felt like this movie did something where it dragged us back into the 90s in a way that I did not like, because there's barely any characters. There's characters of color. There's no black people, so I want to point that out. And I know there's a distinction between those things, but there's one black person. But even that, I'd say, like, if you throw in the colorism flag, I'm like, it was a very light-skinned black person, so I'm like, y'all seem to be straddling a very specific aesthetic in this movie that feels very 90s in a very, very, very specific way.
Right.
And what they did to women.
Yes, and to that point, they leaned really heavily on mocking like white kids who loved rap. They hit that joke 15,000 times. And granted, it was pretty funny. Like, mocking that exact subculture is a very, very hyper-specific experience of being in that era in 1999. But like, they did it without comparison to any, it was almost entirely making fun of white rap, which okay, but like, can you represent like any other type of music or culture that was happening at that time to even make the point of the difference of those things? But no, they had no interest in doing that at all.
I feel like they leaned heavily on like the immortal technique of it all, the very much like that rapper with the physicals and all that, which was a funny bit, but it just felt like a bit that I know Kyle Mooney appreciated, but I felt like I watch it, I'm like, I know what y'all are talking about, but I don't think y'all know how like deep this actually goes. And also, there's no reference to black rap in this at all, which kind of makes me feel like, well, this is kind of, we can't really make fun of this without saying like, and also A Tribe Called Quest was like right there and everybody was ignoring them, you know, or better yet, all the white folks were ignoring them, you know what I mean? Or like, we're not even gonna mention Wu-Tang if we're gonna talk about like white kids loving rap, like we're only gonna talk about Fred Durst in a very specific way, and then Fred Durst being in on the joke is something I would normally like, but I did not like. There was something, when he showed up a little bit, yes, but then as it kept going, I'm like, nah, get him out of here.
Like, why did that suck?
I have no idea.
It shouldn't have
It
sucked.
should not have sucked.
It should have been funny and cool, and like the self-awareness should have been good, but it just, like, again, it dragged and fucking, like, conversations that went on for fucking ever were just driving me absolutely nuts. And I actually think, to what you're saying, this movie was about the white teenagers' experience with 1990. That's what he was talking about. The white kids' hyper-specific small town experience. It's like, I guess, but like Y2K was global. Like, and not only that, but I actually thought it was a crazy choice to make it that, like, I think they were trying to say the computers were starting in that small town and we're going to branch out. I just think if they had spent more time on the actual computer situation, on making weird robot monsters, and like just the tech coming to life was the funnest part of the business when it came to life. So, but they just completely sidelined that at the beginning. They drag forever with these boring ass kids trying to go to one location and go to another and then stare at each other and talk about their crushes while like death and destruction. They don't talk about worrying about their parents once, their families never. They were just like, like just complete. It shocked me actually that there was no realism whatsoever. So that's to your point though. It refused to commit to being funny. It didn't let them be human or comedic. Like, it was grounded in nothing.
Yeah, I think part of it is that they picked actors and they killed off the actors that were good at comedy, because there's two actors that are good at comedy that they kill off very early in the movie. And then once they're gone, I was just like, so is this movie not going to be filled with jokes anymore? Because these are dramatic actors you have here that are doing that, like, really they're not, the chops are not there. They're young people too, but like nobody knows. I don't know Rachel Zegler for her jokes. I know her for being in a terrible remake of West Side Story. I know I stand alone on that one, but being in a terrible remake of West Side Story and a movie I didn't like, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Neither of those movies I like, but in both of those she's playing dramatic roles is kind of my point there. So I'm saying, like, I'm not sure what they were aiming to do here. And I think Kyle Mooney obviously had a vision, but I don't know that it was executed well. With all of that being said, what do you rate this movie? Out of 5 stars, what do you rate this movie? Your face.
I hate to do it. I'm going to give it 2. 2 because it did make me laugh sometimes. And the jokes that were good were really good. They weren't like mid jokes. The jokes were good, but there were so few of them. And it just made me think of all the movies I wish I was watching, like Small Soldiers from 1998, a fucking phenomenal comedic action horror thriller. Like, let's just watch that again. Call it a day.
I absolutely agree. This is a 2-star movie. Here's why. This is a Netflix movie. And if I'd watched this on Netflix, I'd probably be laughing a little bit more because I'd be relaxing on the couch. But it's cold. It's very cold. We're in a basement recording this right now just to stay warm. So it's very cold. And for me to like get completely dressed to go out and watch this at Alamo Drafthouse, like, and I mean, luckily this is a press screening, but imagine if we would have like bought food and stuff, like this would have been terrible. So yeah, it's a 2-star movie because I don't hate it, but I also probably will not watch it again. I don't think this is going to become a cult classic. It's not funny enough. And this is something that if it would have languished on specifically, not even on Netflix, on Amazon Prime, they would have got me with the preview. I would have watched the whole thing and I would have been like, all right, I guess I'll just go ahead and watch, I don't know, what's the one with the black guy that lives in DC that solves murders? Cross. I would have just watched Cross afterwards, which I'm really excited. Yeah, it's actually brand new. Isaiah Mustafa's in it. But yeah, anyway, the point is I would have just watched that. So yeah, I think this is a 2-star movie. Anything else?
I had the same thought, actually. I was like, I bet if I was at home, like kind of half scrolling on my phone, I would be like, oh my God, that's crazy that happened. I would just zone out through the boring conversations these kids were having about their crushes on each other, like tedious. And I hope someone tries to do this, but better at some point in time, because I actually think it's a great idea. But like, how many flopped it? It felt like an elongated SNL bit that just went on for too long.
If it would have just been trailer, I think it would have been funnier. Like if they did a trailer of this on SNL, I would have laughed very hard. But the fact that they had to flesh it out into a whole movie, I feel like is what is like where they really failed. And the things that the movie thinks it's doing with intention, it just turns out that it's not. And so that really, really bothered me. But yeah, with that, Leaving It Theater is a production of Oh It's Big Ron Studios. I mixed this episode and I am out here every week giving y'all a great show. It takes a lot of work. Sometimes I'm up late. Sometimes I got to drive into DC on a Tuesday to watch a movie during a press screening. And that's not easy all the time. That takes a lot of effort and gas and love and affection for the movies. Sometimes you bring a guest to your movie and she's late. She goes to the wrong spot.
It was an accident.
And then you're worried. And I got to deal with that worry. I got to do it by myself as a solo producer out here in these streets. Do y'all understand? Y'all don't understand. If you didn't understand, you might consider becoming a patron. Go to patreon.com/leavingittheater or go to the link in our show notes to support. I appreciate everyone that joins in. Show art from Heather Wilder. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. For more information about Y2K or Laura Nichols, check out our show notes. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, or Threads at Oh It's Big Ron. That's at OHITSBIGRON. You can find out more about this show and other Oh It's Big Ron Studios shows by following us on Instagram at Oh It's Big Ron Studios. Leaving It Theater will be back soon. Thanks for listening. And thanks for being on the show.
Go Sox, go Bruins, go Pats.
What about, isn't there?
Go Celtics.
Is that it? Yeah. That's all of them.
Oh, and go Worcester Red Sox.
What about the Penguins?
That's not us.
Oh, that's Pittsburgh.